What you're seeing here with Joe and me in many ways is what InnoVerb does. We go from boardroom to boardroom with executives in Europe and the US, and it's a joint act. I'm a technologist like many of you here. Joe's a management consultant. And we bring those two worlds together in a seamless way. Joe gets SAP, I get management consulting, but we have grown up doing different things. It's that combination of those two things that create value, right? The ability to go from a business strategy or op model down to process into tech and data, bringing that together is InnoVerb. And we'll talk about that quite a lot. But in many ways, those couplings is what we are trying to do with InnoVerb. Get the best of, call it the SI world, with the best of transformation, business strategy, management consulting. Shall we get started?
Yes.
Right. Somebody somewhere, maybe Sana, needs to make sure we stick to time. Look, the premise of the first session, as you saw on the agenda, is to talk about how the world of SAP is changing. Now, we're supposed to have 400. They've just told me that out on the registration desk, they are no longer allowing people to come in because we are at capacity. And most of you are drawn from the SAP community in Calcutta, in Kolkata, right? Onindo keeps on telling me there's 6,000 of us, right? We've selected the best 400, okay? But the key thing that all of us need to understand is that world that we've been so successful at, individually and collectively, has changed, and changed quite significantly. How is an interesting point, and that's what we will discuss today. How has it exactly changed, and how does it impact all of us, okay? Joe and I don't have the answer, so we'll ask Ambarish, we'll ask even Saurav, we'll ask Koshidhara, and we'll have a chat, both during the forums as well as in the lunch sessions afterwards. But I think you'll all agree, it's not business as usual, right? Things are moving, as with technology, as with SAP, the company is changing, the product is changing, and there'll be winners and losers, right? We plan to be winners, so come join us. Right, let's get into it. I think many of you probably understand this chart instinctively. Now, many of you may not be as old as I am, so you may not relate to the left-hand side of this chart, right? So apparently pre-2000, when I used to work for Ambarishda, and I was the junior-most consultant he took everywhere across India, we used to have the famous islands of information. And the ERP was born, and the big promise was everything got done in one place, and there were no functional silos. Remember those days? We used to go client after client and tell them, you don't have to have a finance system and logistics and this, that. It's all together, it's called ERP, right? And there were really 2 or 3 choices, SAP or Oracle, etc., etc. Well, from sort of about 2000 through to 2015, a lot of organizations around the world spent a lot of money chasing the dream of one. Everything in one place, everything done in the same way. Doesn't matter whether you operated in one country or in 80, whether you are a 2 billion company or a 80 billion company, one was a good number, right? And the Nestle's of the world, the Cadbury's, God knows how many organizations, they all tried to go from hundreds to one. We all made a lot of money as consultants, me included. Our careers were shaped in those 15 years, those big SAP projects. Calcutta was at the forefront of that journey. Many of you grew up doing those iconic projects, Tetra Pak, Nestle, and so on and so forth, right? And some of you are still doing it. Then the world changed. The era of globalization slowed down, right-wingism, protectionism, smaller national boundaries became more prominent, right? The argument inside big corporations was this country is different, and that country is different, and that is unique, and this is rules, tax laws, immigration rules changed. So the world increasingly became more local. And the technology changed to keep pace, okay? So instead of that big monolithic block, and by the way, not many people got to one, right? Many people still ended up with 10, 15, 20. We have the hub and spoke. And all of you, I'm sure, know about this because you are probably spending most of your time today working on a project that is allowing clients to move either from the left to the right or from the middle to the right. And I think there are 2 categories of client organizations: people who are trying to leapfrog from left to the right, and life is tough because there's a lot of work to do. You consolidate and then you break up. This split is the same thing many times. That split, as many of you know, is different bits of your process get done in different places. It's a very hard transition. People who had spent the money getting to one in between found it slightly easier, but still a big change, right? Now, all this started in 2016 when Salesforce, Mark Benioff created Salesforce. What are the things about Salesforce? I know it's sacrilege talking Salesforce in an SAP conference. It's functional. It only did one thing, marketing and sales, and did that well. Never tried to become an ERP, right? It focused on cloud. You get what you get. Change your business to fit into Salesforce. And remember, we as professionals, for those of you who are old enough, we've always argued inside organizations, haven't we, that actually the customer bit is the most unique bit about an organization. Don't change that bit. Change all the things inside, they don't matter. Well, here was the customer bit changing first and accepting market standards. So much for our customers are unique and we deal with them in a unique way. Marketing and sales went cloud. And that set in train a whole series of events that has led to that architecture where all the functional best practices are now done through SaaS products, as you all know. Now, as a professional, if I spent all my time doing SAP, suddenly my organization, the client I'm working for, has to do 20 of these along with SAP in the middle to make it work. SAP as in the ERP, S4, right? Very different project, very different challenge for clients, very different challenge for us. Because if you're an order-to-cash consultant and you don't even know what Salesforce is, you're going to struggle a bit. If you're a source-to-pay consultant and you don't know Coupa or Ariba and you just know S4MM, you're going to struggle to do a design workshop, aren't you? So the nature of skills and nature of projects, nature of systems integration changed because of that architecture. There's almost no argument in the industry that this is the direction of travel. If anything, this is getting more and more fragmented, and that core is getting leaner and cleaner and smaller. So what does that mean for a SAP S4 consultant? You will increasingly get to do less. Scary, right? So today is about explaining how do you transform and reposition yourself in that shrinking world. I think I've scared everybody enough. Joe?
So my role in InnoVerve is actually head of clients and markets, which means that I get to go and present and talk to every single one of InnoVerve's clients, some of the largest brands in the world, actually. And one of the ways they think about this now, as I said, is it's not just about the technology anymore. Yes, the ERP, SAP, yes, the cloud applications, yes, we have to get those to work. But actually, it's these other layers, the data, the processes. How are people going to even experience technology in their organization or outside of their organization, their customers, their vendors? This is something that clients are now thinking about. So as Partha said, for us, it means it's quite a different way of engaging. We can't just say, yeah, we're really good at the gray, we know the systems inside out. If we can't engage on the others and have a conversation on those, then we will become irrelevant. So another way of thinking about that, Partha, are you going to change my slide? Oh. He's not even listening, is he? And another way of thinking about that is, okay, what does that mean for a business and the way that they work? As Partha said, the old world, maybe I wasn't around in those days, where actually everything was done in one technology. So actually you didn't have to worry about all of this complexity. So now thinking about what gets done where in a business, what systems get used, what that means, as I said, for data, systems, people experience, is something that strangely we spend a lot of time speaking to clients about. It's actually more complicated than this nice, well, I think it's simple, but simple diagram makes it sound. So thinking about what gets done in the core of SAP, what gets done in sort of supply chain, and then ultimately what gets done in those cloud applications is ultimately critical. And from a process perspective, think I'm a management consultant, so I think everything is how does this process work in a business? Then thinking about your order to cash process, then actually think, next one. Did anyone else see me like, come on, move on, keep going? And thinking about the order to cash process, so ultimately, how do you get an order from a customer through to how do you collect that cash in the business, isn't now a simple way of doing it. I had one client that said, how many systems do I have to talk to just to get an order from a customer and get cash in the door? I was like, at least 3, if not many more. And they were like, but isn't this the fundamental part of my business, that I place an order and I get money? Yeah. It's that complicated? I was like, unfortunately, yes, that is the way the technology's moved, but our job is to make that as simple as possible. We need to make this as easy for organizations to understand, but also to implement. As Partha said, knowing what gets done in SAP, what gets done in Salesforce, and ultimately that end-to-end process is important. And I don't know, I've put a rough number on it, but I think sort of 45% now of actual those processes are even going to be in SAP. So it's something really, really important to understand that end-to-end.
That number is right? In consumer companies around the world already, you're lucky if you're 45, right? And that's, there are 100 plus projects in flight where the debate is how lean is the core and how clean is the core. The more you push out of the core, of course, it's going to be leaner and cleaner. Now that means you need 55% less SAP consultants, right? Big implications for us. Now, you are thinking, it doesn't feel like that, it's coming. Those programs, so if you, stats, and Oshidara will back me up, I'm sure, SAP enjoys a lot of market presence in the Fortune 500, 2,000, 5,000. Amongst the top 2,000 companies on the world, SAP, I think, had 72% market share, right? Of those companies, less than 10% have completed the S4 journey, as per Gartner. 90% are either in flight or they haven't started. So there's a lot of work coming. But the nature of that work is changing, and if you're just good old SAP, in a funny way, your size of the pie has shrunk. Now, the good news is, SAP is no longer the good old SAP, as you all know. I mean, you've obviously seen the Sapphire, and you are all very technically adept. I get inspired by how much hunger there is in our own Calcutta team to learn new things and adopt new things. And I don't need to present all of this to you, but this is SAP's own slide, and it's their own architecture. S4HANA's vision is to be just that inner circle, right? Just that smaller bit. And then the idea really is to expose a series of AI-enabled intelligence tools inside and around the core, right? That's machine learning, situation handling, analytics, extreme decision-making, micro-decisions, these days Gen AI. And then finally, there is the BTP layer. And that's where SAP talks to all those things around SAP that Joe just referenced. So it's a very different modular architecture where even that smaller 45% code itself is layered. So even the 45 is now down to maybe 25. And if you don't know those 2 layers and you are just on that, the skills will mean you are not relevant when it comes to helping a large client navigate that new world. So, obviously this is a tee up, as you can imagine. Without going into a lot of details, if we pull ourselves back, given that architectural shift, given where SAP is moving, given what we see at boardrooms across the world, and we see a lot of them, trust me, clearly SAP as a technology and as a product and as a company has gone from on-premise to cloud. Now you might think that is an architectural choice. It's not. It's a commercial choice, right? The market valuation, share price, the market community today rewards anything that is sticky long-term revenue for any company. Cloud revenue is sticky long-term repeatable revenue. So SAP share prices are up because its cloud revenues are up. If cloud revenues go down, on-prem revenue goes up, the share price struggles. Okay? So again, the impact of the train that Mark Benioff and Salesforce set off, SAP is responding. It's rebranding its clients from on-prem to cloud. Many of you know pure cloud is actually Grow, and very few large clients are on Grow, but they have invented this in-between private cloud thing called Rise, and they're forcing clients to go into Rise. Okay, you can't go all the way, can't go for the moon, can't make Calcutta the Silicon Valley, but at least let's make Calcutta the Bangalore, right? That's Rise. Take the first step. Have your own environment, but use the taxi. So really, cloud skills, and in that world, with a Rise client, the ancillary products become extremely important. The other very important aspect of RISE, as many of you know, and Obronil will, I'm sure, share more over lunch, is SAP's vision is no longer to be a software company. It's providing infrastructure because the hyperscalers packaged in. It's providing cloud services. It's even providing system administration and support, possibly implementation. Think about that. In its extreme form, SAP does everything that it takes to implement SAP. Now, whether they get there ever is another question. But again, the size of the pie and the nature of the work is changing, right? If you have colleagues and friends who implement a pure cloud product, say Salesforce or Ariba or Coupa or whatever, Workday, their nature of their projects is fundamentally different. SAP and us, we haven't been to that world. In the next 3-4 years, that's happening. And therefore, there's a lot to learn what it means to be a cloud product. We've done the second one enough, and then finally, obviously you've heard all the verbiage around AI and business AI and all that. Okay, it's called Joule and it's supposed to work, but we all know with SAP, right? First they announce it, then nothing happens. Year 2, it starts to crawl. By year 3, it works, and everybody adopts it. The same thing will happen here. So even in the worst case, we are 2 years away from significant amount of SAP inbuilt processes being replumbed with AI embedded in it. And clients will force us as consultants to make best use of it. Now that's where the second point is relevant. If your market to cash process has less than 45% in SAP, how does SAP Joule access the data that is outside SAP? That's the big controversy in the industry today. Where do you join the data to allow AI to work effectively? And nobody's figured that out, but we'll come to that later. A lot of change, and therefore today's session is very much dedicated to exploring what that means for us as consultants and how Innoverve has really taken the lead in all of that. But that's all technology. Joe?
Yes, so one of the things I'm very passionate about is helping companies actually change. So we've just talked all about, there's all this new tech. Someone can hopefully see that NT means new tech. So there's all of this new technology, but actually, if old organizations just adopt new technology, you basically get an expensive old organization. They don't actually change what they do. They just spend lots of money, get some new technology, and still work exactly the same way. So one of the things that we're thinking about in Innoverve, but also is really important for you to think about, is how do you actually implement that technology differently and help an organization actually change? It's got to be for good. It's got to help the organization do something better, not just spend money and implement something new.
That's the Buckingham Palace, isn't it?
Well, yeah, it could be an expensive old organization.
Brilliant example.
So the way in which we implement is also changing, not just the technology. We've described all of the ways in which the tech is actually changing itself, but the way in which you implement that technology is fundamentally changing too.
Me, is it? Okay. This is the problem of not rehearsing enough. Right, so let's talk about how the world of implementing SAP, which is basically our trade, right? Stefan Orlowski, who used to be the global CEO of Heineken and my ex-client, after talking to me for a while, he was doing a coaching session, said, okay, let me sum up your career. For last 29 years, all you've done is you've helped old companies try and implement new technology and fail. Like, yeah, okay. That's a good summary, Stefan, but that's pretty much it. And I think that's true for all of us. We just take really old, clunky companies, very big, very slow, very bureaucratic, and we try to get new SAP technology into them to make them better. Sometimes we succeed, sometimes we don't, right? So how is that project, that transformation project, changing? Previously, it was a necessity. You needed an ERP, right? Now, because so much is being done in the cloud products, now you need to really have a business case to keep MRP in S4. Otherwise, you can do it in Blue Yonder. There has to be a business case for keeping direct procurement in S4. You could move that to Coupa, and so on and so forth. Those choices have proliferated. Recently, we have a client who's debating whether to do invoicing, not even order management, in Salesforce.
Yeah.
Right? Pricing in a cloud product called PriceFX. So the size of the core is shrinking more and more. Wherever SAP is going to win, They're going to win because there is a focus on value, right? We've talked a lot about tech, but really we'll go into this a bit more. If you finally embrace the fact that it's all cloud and you can't change the software much, what are you going to change then? The business. You're going to change the way the business works. Are we best placed to convince some fierce warehouse management clerks or finance accountants or sellers out in the market for a large consumer or a manufacturing or a utilities business to change their job, how they go through their days? That is the skill that will be in short supply in the future. The software isn't changing. The person, the individual, the persona, the role, the way they do the work, the data they create, the data they put up, the data they take down, that's changing. Consultants who can help do that will win. Consultants who are all about making the software change will fail. Adapt, not adapt is pretty much that, and Joe will go into that. I mean, you will hear later Aubrey will talk about the AI first delivery model that we come up with. But really, I mean, how many years of our lives here in this room have we spent running the same test script again and again and again, loading the same data file again and again and again, right? I'm not even going into spec writing. I'm not even going into writing code, yeah? Not even the training materials that you wrote again and again. All of that will now be done by AI. You can easily here and now knock out 30–40% of an implementation effort very conservatively using AI. 30–40% less work by us. That 30–40% need to shift to what I talked about, which is adopt, not adapt, right? So things are changing massively around us, and it is time for us to wake up, say, what is it, smell the coffee? Yeah. And be at the forefront of the change, because there'll be winners and losers. Let's hope the SAP community in Kolkata sees that before most others, and we create a niche for ourselves that makes us winners, not in terms of size, because size isn't the only determinant, but in terms of the quality of what we do, the nature of what we do, the excellence of what we do, right? Because the ground is shifting, whoever moves fast and decisively and smartly wins. Joe.
Yes, this is a very complicated chart, and I won't go through every box, but a big part of what we just discussed was actually convincing the business or understanding from the business how technology is going to help make their life better. Now, obviously at a boardroom that we speak to of organizations, they're thinking about how do we expand our business, how do we save costs, how do we disrupt in our market. They're not thinking about the nuts and bolts of a technology. And therefore, one of the things we think about is how do we connect those two worlds? On the left, strategically, what does a business want to achieve? With on the right, what do you need to do, and what does that mean for SAP? You wouldn't believe how often we've had this conversation in the last year. Every client that we've gone to said, actually, yeah, we don't know the path between the two. Please, can you help us work that out? So one of the ways that we look at that is let's work left to right, in terms of looking at all of the activities that we've done, but actually let's look at the strategy first and think about what that could mean. So this actually is a real life example, it's not one we've mocked up, of an organization that was trying to win where they are. So think about that is be more productive in the market that they're in, win more. But actually expand to where we should be was their priority number 2. So they had categories where this sparkling water, they were a big water brand, but they didn't have a sparkling category. They were like, so hang on, we are a big water organization, people buy water from us, why not have a sparkling brand? So expand to where we should be, then see the future, think about what those innovative things are coming, health drinks, yogurts, etc. Think about the future, and then also manage our business. So let's look at buying, selling organizations. So really thinking about what the business is trying to achieve. This is what the execs are worried about in that organization. How the hell is SAP going to help enable that?
This company was going to spend 600 million over a 5-year period to do that bit, just that tower. And when they went to the board, after working with somebody I will not name, a big SI organization, for a year and a half, they had a lot of detail on how to do that tower, and the board said no. We worked to create that linkage between what the CEO was trying to do, which is change the organization, with why they should spend the money. Joe?
So then thinking about what are those, I call them stories, that actually help an organization go from what are we trying to achieve at a board level, ultimately back to what will the technology and SAP deliver. So in this one, as I said, expand to where we should be. Actually, we want to go into new markets, we want to release new products. But then in order to do that, we need to be efficient, right? We can't have 10 systems, 20 different master data, different ways of doing it. We also can't spend the same money in every country doing the same thing to launch the same product globally. So working back to say, actually, therefore, what do we need the business to achieve? We need supply chain, we need manufacturing, warehousing, but ultimately then, how will SAP enable that? So thinking that through, now, you all go, okay, that's a nice way of looking at it, Joe, but as Partha said, we will not be able to have a big technology program. There will not be that investment if we can't connect these two. And really, my view is if you can't articulate that story to someone in the business, then what job have we got in the future? This is the connection we need to make. So thinking about that overall, this was one example, but I said we've done this for multiple clients now, and really is something to ask yourself, what's the business trying to achieve?
I mean, Joe's known as the fishbone lady. We call this chart fishbone, and she goes around telling all boards and showing them how they can connect their own business strategy with their technology investments.
Yeah, I mean, we had one client that was in the middle of their project. They'd already signed it off and saying, we still don't quite understand, can you help us?
Right, now comes to a more familiar territory, how you do these projects. So InnoVerb's got the AI first delivery model. It's not rocket science. I could stand here and give you a sales spin. As I said, how many hours of your life in the last year you spent on doing stuff that AI could do? You can answer that question in your head, right? Whether it's testing or data or writing specs or writing code. Okay, I can't do everything we can do because we are smart people. If they could even do 30% of what we did, job done. A 100 million project will now cost 70. That's a lot of money saved for the client. They will spend that money on training their people, aligning their operating model, buying new companies, opening new factories, introducing new products. And we could make money if we are smart enough to help them on those things. And that's why Joe's previous slide is helpful. We need to pivot. InnoVerb's pivoted. Okay? But that requires a very different skill set. The AI first delivery model, really, we are going around telling clients, and we've got 3 projects currently in flight that use this. 20 to 30% reduction in implementation effort. Clients always look at that and go, okay, so you're giving me a 30% discount then. Yeah. Even more importantly, we're training your people how to use it for their future projects. Right? So if I can actually knock off, or Brunel can knock off 50%, I'm going to say 30, am I not? But it's very doable. It's basics, data, test, cutover, spec writing, right? Training material creation. How many projects are you on? All of you are on an SAP project in some form or shape today. If I asked you to raise your hand on how many of those design workshops you are actually actively embedding AI use cases into. Anybody doing that? Now, whether you are at Saturday and don't want to raise your hand, or is the real answer, I don't know. I've gone around, asked that question, client after client, SI after SI. And the reality is, across 100 such SAP projects, design phase, and remember, whatever is getting designed then gets rolled out, and that organization stuck with it for the next 10 years, right? Yet, less than 2% are actually actively building AI into process design. They're all leaving it, we'll get SAP done, and then later on and come into it, which never happens. We all know that, right? If you buy an Ambassador and then you want it to fly, it's only going to go at 20 miles an hour on the ground, right? So there is a big opportunity there when you go into your next workshop with your client to say, in the order to cash area, in the R2R area, these are the top 5 AI use cases, right? That requires us to educate ourselves. That requires us to understand what's happening in the state of play and make AI real. Very few people or organizations. You see all this newspaper advertisement. So-and-so invests 2 billion in AI. Well, their clients see nothing. Yeah? And I think that is the change we need to make. We have done that. We are a small company, but we know for the top 6 or 7 end-to-end processes in consumer product, what are the 3 use cases that should be plumbed into not just SAP, but the 3 circles Joe talked about around SAP.
But a big part of, as we discussed, the way we're implementing these programs is changing, is focusing on how you make the business adopt these new ways of working and ultimately change. So you could call it change management, you can call it training, you can call it whatever you want, but actually there is a huge part of these programs that mean you need to make the business do something different. And actually what we've seen is we're taking a lot of techniques or ways in the current personal life, how you influence people, into these projects. So let's take Instagram. Everyone has an influencer that they follow on Instagram. They buy something, so we all buy it. That's how it works, right? I mean, I'm not naive to know that when my favorite Instagram follower posts a new dress, I'm like, oh, that's nice, I'll buy it as well. But actually, we don't use those techniques internally in an organization. We don't think, okay, who are those influencers in a business that actually, if they say that they're going to do something different, we all listen. So we're trying to start to apply some of those new techniques that they're already there in our ordinary life, they're just not used in business, to these programs. Think social media influencers, think even Netflix. You know those influential like documentaries that you watch and go, I need to change what I'm doing. Even thinking about how you could do that in a program. And also bringing the future to life. So no one buys something or changes the way without seeing what that thing is. Yet how many times when we do these projects do we do a big design phase, we draw everything on paper, we write everything in a design document, it's a book this big, we print them out in PowerPoint, and everyone's like, yeah, but actually what does that mean? How am I going to do something different? Bringing that future to life through what we call the show home, and Benna will bring that to life over lunch, actually showing someone what the future is going to look like is a big transition, and that is the way that these programs are going to happen. The design books of old will definitely die out. And the last part of that is actually once you even implemented, thinking about how do you actually then encourage people to use it? How do you nudge people? How do you use AI? How do you get different behaviors to say, hang on, you haven't actually even logged in, or you haven't changed this, or you haven't done that. Actually, there are technologies, even AI itself, to help us do that. So again, we're going to have to embrace these. It will change the way we do these programs, but actually, I think it's for the fun side, right?
You know, it's quite interesting listening to your Netflix point. Anindo, I recently saw a Netflix documentary around how chicken are processed and various other forms of meat. After seeing that Netflix documentary, I momentarily had this desire to become vegetarian, right? I did have it momentarily. I thought you need to see that. But that's a brilliant example of how you can force change inside an organization. If you can show ITC, Hindustan Liver, name a client, this is how you treat your customers because your systems are crap. It creates this desire to get better, and that's what Joe's talking about, right? By the way, similarly, this nudge thing, I'm just expanding on it. I don't know how many of you know this, but WorkZogo is an AI-based nudge tool. This has got nothing to do with SAP. But how many times we actually do an SAP project and the client says, thanks for the work, but actually it didn't work, we didn't get the benefits because our users didn't use the new ways of working. All that software does is learns how the users are behaving on SAP, how many invoices are they processing, are they doing the right things as per the process documentation, are they calling the right customer, are they negotiating the right discounts with the suppliers, and essentially nudges the individual through their mobile phone to say, you should call that customer, you should ask for more discount. Sounds interesting, doesn't it? And yet all the data is in SAP. All it took is some smart people in Bangalore to take that concept, collaborate with a professor in the US on behavioral science, and come up with that amazing change engine. And suddenly clients know, okay, if Partha and Joe implement SAP, I can have a way of knowing if my users are actually achieving the productivity benefits that I put into the business case. Make sense? So there are so many things that are happening around that are very, very interesting. Which then leads me to my punchline. Up to date is out of date. So if you think you know the latest module, You worked out the latest release of TMS 3 point whatever something. You got S4HANA release, whatever the latest is, Oshidara, I don't remember, but 2024 September, great. But open your eyes and have a think about what's happening in the next 2-3 years. And all the information's out there. It's our ability to see the big picture and focus on the right things in our area. So very much up to date, which I'm sure all of us are, because we have a voracious learning appetite, all of us. I know I'm part of this community, but even that is out of date. So yeah, what makes a world-class SAP consultant in 2-3 years' time? Maybe next year, maybe in 2-3 months' time. So we've talked about a lot of these. But I remember quite a few SAP consultants here that I worked with that I really respected. And they used to say, we make SAP dance. We know how to configure it, customize it, write user exits, write enhancements. We'll make it dance, right? That word is gone. You are now seen as a bad guy. You customize the software, right? Now you need to make business dance. Convince the business to adopt standard out-of-the-box functionality. That's a very different skill. Huh? How many of us see the world a bit like Bengalis, right? Bongs and non-bongs. Similarly, in SAP world, there's SAP and non-SAP, right? How many of you have you spent your career saying, oh, he's non-SAP, she's non-SAP, right? Exactly. Well, that world's gone. Unfortunately, we need those non-SAP guys now because the end-to-end process now cuts across SAP and non-SAP. So we need to just be a little more respectful. Instead of calling them non-bongs, you have to call them Tamils or whatever. Similar to say that's Salesforce, that's Ariba, that's Coupa. We have to make a little effort to understand what those things do. Otherwise, you won't be able to connect it, right? So in that way, the world has changed. The consultant used to configure to requirement. We understood the client's requirement. We got into a workshop. We asked them what needs to happen, and we did it. Well, now you're the bad guy. You are supposed to explain to him why he or she should change it into the way the cloud software works. And this is my pet hate. I will often go and ask a Joita or a Shujan, why have you done it this way for the client? Oh, it's SAP standard. No, say that that's the right thing for that company to do because it's the best practice in consumer or in manufacturing or in that context, this tax or legal or statutory requirement. Just to hide behind SAP standard. And we all know there's nothing called SAP standard. There are hundreds of variants, right? So again, to go from that to make sure that we are putting new things into the mix, whether they're SAP or around it. Many of that is really the thinking behind InnoVerve. When Joe and I and a few other partners, Obronil there, we sat down and we conceptualized what does the new age SAP consulting business look like. We pretty much went through the same thinking. We all gave up big jobs, ourselves as founders, and then more people have joined us, as you can see, and many more hopefully soon. It's all based on that one premise, that things have changed. We addressed two gaps and an opportunity in the market, right? InnoVerve.advise is all about helping clients make decisions of the sort I've explained to you or Joe has explained to you in the last hour. They are business decisions as much as technology decisions. Our view was traditional big four firms did that, but they've all become systems integrators now. Because there's money in systems integration. So there's nobody on the client side helping them make choices of what gets done when. Those three circles you talked about. We've had a lot of success with that. InnoVerve.tech implements S4HANA using the AI-first delivery model for organizations who are prepared to be cloudified, accept standard. Right, like we discussed. InnoVerve.ai is the third pillar of the business, and this is an opportunity. Nobody knows where AI is going, but as I said, make a small start. We collaborated with 2 Silicon Valley startups to create some AI apps that we embed into design. And that pretty much is the InnoVerve business. InnoVerve.advise is a high-end premium technology consulting business in and around SAP. We do more than SAP, but I always tell clients, if you've got SAP as the ERP, we know your data structures, and therefore we are well qualified to help you. Doesn't mean we won't do anything beyond SAP, but we start with SAP. You should be very proud to know this. Our team in Advise, based globally, a lot of them are here in Calcutta, and we charge unbelievable premium global rates. We don't do offshore rates. because a Bhartendu is the best in the world. Just because he's in India doesn't mean you get a cheap price. There is no India rate card. One global tech consulting rate card. And there are clients who won't afford it, and we don't work with them. Innoverve.tech is quite different. This is more using AI to make things quicker, cheaper, faster. And there we are more of a traditional SI, but doing work differently. I've talked about AI. Within a year, we've had great success, and we need to stay humble. Currently, our problem is we need all of you, which is why we are doing this event. We've gone around, we've excited so many clients, we've won so many jobs, we need people. I could make it sound more glamorous, but it's quite basic. We don't need thousands, because our vision is to keep this company small. 500 is a good number. On Indo, we'll talk about that, but we want to create a family. We don't want to become 100,000, 200,000, 300,000 organizations, pals, sals, cals running around, almost like cattle to graze, right? That's not that's the job. I used to do that job. I've given that up. So this time it will be boutique-y, it will be premium, it will solve real problems. I only want the best. Yeah? You will fly business class, you will get top salary, and I'll charge you for premium rates. If you can't justify those rates, this is the wrong place. So we've worked with a whole host of global companies. That is a massive organization. The first one is, we were born with that company, and they have been our biggest client by far. We've got 20 plus clients now. Everybody knows the second one, that's Europe's largest and most valuable company. They have gone from 8 billion to 28 billion in 2 years, and so on and so forth. Largely we operate in consumer and pharma. We do some manufacturing and some tech. Those are our happy hunting spots. Sure?
Yeah, and as Partha said, I guess when we came up and conceptualized what Innoverve should do, it's not that we're going to be everything to everyone, and therefore we've come up with different engagement models and different roles that we play depending on what we see the gap in the market to be. So we go from sort of strategic advice to quality assurer, business integrator when they need us to play that role, all the way through to systems integrator for smaller organizations. But really thinking about, actually for you as an individual, it means that there is a breadth of opportunity of different types of engagements to be involved with. As we said, going from sort of strategic advice to ultimately being on the client side, where you're being the client and telling them what they should do, not gathering requirements, is a big change that we've seen. You would expect me to say this, but I'm so proud already that we are a global organization. We set up the business over a year ago, and having clients globally. In fact, I'm from the UK and we don't even have a UK client yet. How embarrassing is that? So that's my mission. But very much organizations across all of the large areas. So even having clients across in the US. Also, we do have clients here in India, but very much in terms of where the teams sit, it's very dispersed. We're very remote, but we really want Calcutta to be that hub for us.
I think we've done that.
One of the big things that I wanted to just explain, though, is we are a smaller organization. We've been a year old, and we are, as Partha said, not aiming to be huge. However, one of the things we really care about is what that experience looks like for people that work at Innoverve. So thinking about the skills that we can develop and ultimately what we can offer to clients. As Partha said, really clients are looking for honest, independent advice, and therefore making sure that you have an opportunity to do that. And working with some of the biggest brands, how embarrassing, but I actually watched a Netflix documentary on the flight here about one of our clients. I'm that geeky. But the fact that they were on a Netflix documentary talking about their growth, the impact they're having in the market, and I was like, hang on, they're our client. And actually, O'Brien is their quality assurance partner for their global SAP transformation. And I was like, how cool is that? So working with some of the biggest brands. Focus on innovation and learning. We've talked a lot about AI and things, and that's one of our key passions. And we'll talk about it a little bit later, but really being that happy home. Actually, we know each other all really well, and we have lots of fun whilst doing this.
Yeah, the Happy Home started with Orion, for those of you who know Orion, and we are trying to create a small one, as Orion we'll talk about shortly. Joe?
So finally, some of the values that we embrace and we talk about a lot in Innoverve. 0% incumbency. Look, we know this industry well, but we don't have the baggage of old. So if you think something should be done differently, we can do it differently here. There's no, we've done it this way before. 100% client focus, everyone says that, but what I really mean by that is actually we are often on the client side. So actually we are helping them select an SI, or we are helping them think about some of these decisions. We're really on their side. And 0% BS, I'm not going to say the full word, and actually means, yes, say it as it is. If we don't understand something, we'll say. If the technology can't do something, we'll say. And actually, clients really respect that we're not just trying to sell the next project or sell the next technology. Actually, we can say, do you know what, it might even be the right thing to take a pause, do some more reflection. You know, we will say what we think.
I mean, a lot of people here will resonate to that. I asked quite a few of you how much of your time in the last 1 year you spent trying to convince people in your own companies to do the right things. So you know it's the right thing for the client. You just need 20 approvals, 50 emails, 20 arguments, right? That's BS. And unfortunately, it's the reality when a company becomes that big and you are just a small machine part, it needs to control the machine part, right? Now we've decided not to be big. We've picked the best, and therefore we are able to get away with zero BS, and it is something that clients really resonate to. Right, shall we go?
And 100% happy home, or happy, I mean, we want to have fun while doing it, right? I mean, the fact that everyone from the team came at, I don't know, 6 o'clock this morning to be putting up banners, getting everything organized, quite passionate, but we enjoy it while we do it.
So, get yourself an unfair advantage. The best amongst you, join Innoverve. We are hiring.